Eta ongi etorri guztioi Donostiako Zinemaldiko 72. ediziora, gaurko prentsaurrekoan Tardes de Soledad filma izango dugu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 72nd San Sebastian International Film Festival. In today's press conference, we have the film Tardes de Soledad, which competes in the official section represented. We have part of the cast and crew. On the right, we've got Pedro Palacios, producer, Albert Serra, director, MONTSE TRIOLA, director, and Luis Ferran, producer. That is to say, I wanted to do, what's the genesis of the idea? This is a question for the director of the film, Albert Serra, albeit the producers can answer, where does this idea stem from, the need of making this documentary, and in the same time, how do you manage this? Because all of those that have seen it, we've been able to see that it has a really, access to the material. This is, we show what is invisible, that is to say, because this sort of subject matter has never been dealt with this angle. It was a friend who had a master's from the university with research. He said, you've got to do something with us. I said, I haven't got a subject matter. I have got no documentary subject matter to do. So years went by, he continued to insist. And I said, all of a sudden it occurred to me, the only issue that's a bit close to me, which is a bit extreme, and because of my light knowledge and the digital format could be interesting to document, is precisely bullfighting. So therefore, because I was admired Russian and Chinese filmmakers that portrayed a very serious subject matter. This was the only subject, and over time the project came to fruition. We had the collaboration of Andreas Rocarrey. We worked with Paul Aguado, and part of the work that we're working in and in other images, but for this I got in touch with Rocarrey, and thanks to the generosity of the access that you were referring to his generosity, we were able to capture all of these images. That was the objective of the film, that's to try to find, make a documentary, to forget about all of the a prioris and to look with the camera, things that you see with the camera that quite probably with human eyes you can't see for whatever reason because you're far away, but you don't have necessary concentration, and looking for this perspective and these atmospheres which were quite close to what I'd done before in the past, because the fantasy side of the things that the film has, and I understand the reality side of things, but plastically speaking, we amplify and stylize, for example, and we go to a certain territory which goes into fantasy. I'm not too sure. And also the work methodology was exactly identical to what I used in fiction films, so therefore I knew it would work for sure with three cameras. There were a few cameras in other cases, but with three cameras which have complete autonomy in my shoots. I never look at the camera. I don't look at the visor to see what they're doing. So therefore, it was a learning process, and also for them, because normally in fiction films I give some indications, but here nothing at all. And so therefore we limited ourselves to learning and discovering. It was a discovery journey of these aspects, discovering little things. For example, the dialogues of his gang, for example, the bullfighting gang, this appeared in the editing room, and it was intuition that they were saying interesting things, but I never analyzed the images during the shooting process. I didn't know very well. And then all of a sudden you realize you discovered something that you could even structure the film around, like these remarks on that they're talking about what's happening. And so therefore it was to open oneself completely to the possibility of things to emerge with this vision, which was a bit free and as honest as possible to capture images and moments during the filming. Hi, Alberto. I'm going to ask you in Catalan. We don't translate Catalan. We're very sorry.
creus que un cert tipus de públic, mitjans, ara mateix li fan més cas al teu cinema del que passava abans?
Sí, hombre, yo creo que Pacifiction marcó un punto de inflexión en cierta manera, también por la repercusión.
Also because of the repercussion that it had in Cannes to be in the competition, obviously, and also the Caesar Awards that we had nominations, it got the Best Actor and Best Photography. Well, yes, sincerely, it was a point of inflection for me. And this film, I'm not too sure. We'd also planned at the same time before Pacifiction, so it wasn't a consequence, or it was calculated anyway, to premiere it at this moment. But it's a different format. I'd never done a documentary before, and I felt like doing one. It was, well, I didn't. The truth is, I didn't feel like doing it. Well, to tell you the truth, but as I committed myself to doing it, and the person insisted me, who was the founder of the documentary master's degree, and I said I can't say no as well. I don't know how to say no. So therefore, but of course, once I've decided to do it, the process became very interesting, especially from the inside, with a perspective, trying to keep a pure perspective, an innocent perspective to an issue that we know, which is quite controversial, that is to say, bullfighting. But this didn't affect me at all. But what we wanted to do is to try to get as close as possible and to find strange and unprecedented images and moments, forcing things as much as possible to achieve these types of images. I don't know. Hi, good morning, Albert. I thought the film was splendid, brutal, I would say, a work of art, sincerely, whether you like bullfighting or not. But beyond this, I'd like to ask you of that discussion that you're talking about, which is open vis-a-vis bullfighting. I think that the film doesn't position itself, because on the one hand, you talk about the braveness and the courage of the bullfighter, but then we also see the suffering of the bull on the other hand. Am I mistaken, or the truth is that was the way you wanted to look at it? Yes, it does position itself in the sense that we know a certain appreciation of bullfighting. This is indisputable. But at the same time, the honesty of the story, all of the elements, especially the visual elements, which are more interesting, we could go further in depth into these issues, but they exist and they're on the screen, and they are expressive or as lively as they appear on the screen. But a bit of irony, because there's a bit of humor in the film, there's a bit of irony. For example, not everything is taken completely serious. There are comical things in the dialogues, etc. So they position it in the sense that there is a certain fascination for this subject and a certain appreciation by the main leading actor because of his commitment, but at the same time, we don't renounce to making an art film that itself has to have elements that belong to it, and they're not at the service of one cause or anything else. They're at the service of cinema, as you said at the beginning, and of course, this is what you see in the end result. Whatever people think about the bullfighting per se is external to the film. I'm interested in what the people think of it as a film, as a work of art, because all of the logic, internal logics in the editing room, for example, I would practically say are thought of according to the content, that say the effect that it'll create, or what will people think, or stop thinking. And with an issue like this, you couldn't edit anything. If you had to listen to what people think of, you'd never make a film. You have to make a film which is coherent and which is internally coherent to you. So therefore, that's the only possible way to do it. And it's a film. It's a film. And there's no other considerations. I've never had it in any other films that I've made. I'm not going to start now, am I? Hi, good morning. Congratulations to the film that undoubtedly visually is a work of art, completely. And in fact, when we left the film theater, many people would say, is it a favor or against? Is it a favor against? I'm not too sure. In this animalist world we live in, this film also has moved you away from other countries, that is, whether this can make the film not be seen in other countries like France or the Nordic country. No, on the contrary, the film, in fact, has been selected in all of the festivals, and that surprised even me to be selected already. For example, the next festival is the festival in New York, and it is true that I didn't know exactly how it would be accepted by the audience for Germany or the Biennale or Tokyo, for example, all the festivals, Oslo, all of the festivals. So therefore, all the festivals, absolutely, of all the countries, and amongst them, the most politically correct in the world, which is Canada and the US and almost Germany, one of these, they've all taken it in. So there I think the external look is not the same as there is here. I imagine it because I haven't talked about it. I do receive messages and congratulations, etc. But I realize that it's like a look which is more anthropological. That's I look at it, that's something that exists, they don't address it, it exists, and that's the case. What they're interested in is how it's portrayed, artistically or aesthetically speaking. So therefore, or how it's exposed, how cinematographically it is relevant. I think this is the issue. It is true that I was a bit surprised as well, but that's the way it is.
Hi, question here from Brazil, Rodrigo Fonseca, Correio da Manhã. Congratulations for the amazing film. I would like to understand a little bit more your process of the sound engineering of the film. That was amazing. And if you could tell a few words about your process of creation with Arthur Tort. He's your partner in other films. How do you work together?
Should I answer in English or in Spanish? ¿Sí? No. Bueno, el sonido era una cosa muy importante.
Sound is something that's very important in the film. We had the maximum that we had the live and direct sound. Live sound, one of the great things of the film are the wireless microphones, and these wireless microphones that have evolved very well. Before they had batteries and transmitters, and we had to change the battery every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes or 25 minutes. And now with new batteries and the USBs, for example, you can have it and they last for 5 hours, the wireless microphones. Without this, a great part of the film wouldn't exist. But quite simply, no one can make a film with this perspective on bullfighting because nobody had wireless microphones for 5 hours that lasted 5 hours. The truth that's used so much in the film, the truth of what you hear is there due to that wireless microphones. And then obviously in all of my films there's sound, there's a lot of sound fantasy, there are strange effects, a bit more conceptual issues, not strictly realistic, but essentially speaking, the basis of many of the things that have to do with the sound and the access that we had, not only to the generosity of the bullfighters, but because of the digital technology, and answering your questions about images is the key of everything. It wasn't easy because to film bullfighting and they move, it's all unforeseeable, how to focus things. And it was a learning process, not only of the DOP, Artur, but also of the operators, the camera operators. Everyone had to understand how you could film this technically and also understand, as I said before, what was the interesting. Each camera operator had the option of finding something. We didn't have the obligation to transmitting or broadcasting or serving any cause or say anything that we knew beforehand. All the contrary, each camera operator independently with their own, obviously we talked about everything after each bullfight and we try to improve it, but at the moment of truth, each camera operator had to select or try to find the interest of every shot. So therefore, this was a long process because not all camera operators were always available, and so it was very complex. It took a long time, and the last aspect, that understanding the images, what I like to do, for example, with Artur, who's the DOP, but also he started to work as an editor along with me. But you're the DOP, but at the same time you're in the editing room. It allows you to understand the nature of the images completely different in a way. So therefore you start to look at the world and to look what's in front of the camera in a way which is much more in a much more accurate way, precise way, or in a much more malign way, evil way, in the good sense of the word, if you catch what I'm saying. That's how you're much more incisive and you know exactly what'll be useful, and you're not there just simply constructing and constructing images. That's a process, it's a type of process which is very documentary-like. It's applied in documentary, but I applied it in all my other fiction films, and here we reproduced it in the most natural and simple way possible. There wasn't too many secrets to it, apart from how long the process was and how arduous or complicated. Each bull ring was a world on its own. Not always you've got the ideal positions to film each bullfight. Problems of a very different nature, but thanks to this, another thing that's also important, which is the editing room. The digital editing, for example, to have access to all of the material practically on a lot of hard drives, but to have all of the combinations, because the film had to be constructed. Okay, we shot a lot of bullfights in the van and in the room, but the film still had to be constructed. So what do you do? How do you do this? So therefore, once again, the fact of all of the previous films and working in these types of editing processes that construct or create a structure of the film, but practically with all the contents completely separate, we applied that to this film as well. I'm not sure whether the rest of the producers have any opinion as regards what the process, the long shooting and editing process was from a production standpoint. Well, the truth is, from the production standpoint, it started. Initially, we wanted to shoot a big bullfight, a great bullfight with a lot of cameras in a spectacular way, and precisely trying to go to those places where we'd never shot before, or that have never been filmed before. But then we realized that it was impossible. So therefore, it's been a journey through lots of bull rings, and as Alberto said, a lot of complications in order to shoot the film. And plus, we were we were learning how to shoot the idea that Albert had in his mind in bullfighting, shooting with animals, and how unforeseeable all of this is, and not always the bullfights come out good or not. So it was quite complicated. How many did we shoot? 14 bullfights in 14 different places with different sizes of bulls, different bulls. Everything was very complicated, and nevertheless, thanks to God, it was a compendium. The film started to find its path in the editing room according to the images that we've seen and filmed. And we are very happy with the result. That's what I do always, and it's not something that frightens me too much. I always have quite a lot of confidence that with this way, I end up finding something that's interesting. I think it's the only way to find anything interesting. But the dialogues or some shots of people's looks, this is something that is quite unprecedented. Hi, good morning. Good day. I'd like to ask you about the choice of the bullfighter and the bullfighters gang, whether you got in touch with other bullfighters or whether you already had Roca Rey in your mind, because I say in Latin America, there's a lot of bullfighting is well taken, but it could have been, the fact that it could have been a Spanish bullfighter, and also the gang as like supporting actors of the director of the film. They would, but some of them are worthwhile a spin-off. For example, in the documentary, the initial idea was do the two bullfighters, do a parallelism between two bullfighters, and we shot two bullfighters, Paraguayo and Roca Rey. And we wanted to parallel lives with Roca because they had a different personality between them. But slowly but surely we started to, with all the material that we had in the editing room, we realized that this film would last 2.5 hours or something. To make it for 4 hours, it was impossible. We started with one. We have the other material. We're working on it to give a vision which is completely different in another piece of work. But at the end of the day, what was imposed initially was Roca Rey, above all because, and as he said before, each bullfight is a world, and it could be really brilliant or very boring or fatal, or it could be we were very lucky. Three bullfighters got caught by the bulls, and this is a bit fatal. This and this now that normally doesn't always happen, but this dramatic side of a bullfight, when the bullfighter gets caught, Roca Rey gave us a very clear structure to which way we had to go, and so therefore, even photogenically, or this personal mystery and magnetism, for example, gave another layer to his character, that you are more intrigued, shall we say, especially the degree of commitment that he has as a bullfighter. It put more questions on the table, so therefore, and the gang, I don't choose it, he chooses his gang. He's got sufficient problems because they got to do another function, but it is true that luck, obviously luck favors the brave, and for example, we don't know whether we can find interesting in one of the gangs, but we're quite fortunate that the three members of the gang, two of them, I've got this innate poetry, which is incredible, especially in some dialogues, and I say so. We discovered this subsequently in the editing room, and I don't know. The truth is, the fronts of the soul, life is worthless. That's the price we have to pay. So, for example, full, complete truth, for example, phrases of this nature had, and with exaggeration to the humor, the exaggeration of praise, this irony, that layer of irony that is in all my films. I said, so what? The film hardly even takes itself seriously. That's another little bit of atmosphere that's in all my films, that it questions the seriousness apart from the transcendence of what we see and how dry and the violence that occurs in some cases. This was just great good luck, really. The gang was very lucky. We were lucky. In fact, one of the characters that's not in his gang now, who talks a bit more, and he's from Seville. He's very gracious. Antonio Chacon is his name. He's not in his gang anymore. It's not the same thing without him in his gang. I said, why don't you go back with Antonio? Because for us, I don't know. I don't know the reason why he's not in the gang. Maybe it's a technical issue for him, but for us, it was really good fortune that we had him there. But it was a long process to get to the bullfighters. But yes, of course, because we thought with what bullfighter we could work with. First, we talked with Pablo Aguado and his representative, who have always been very generous with it. And there was an initial idea that Albertas explained, that there was going to be two bullfighters, and they, in Pablo, said, there's this other bullfighter who's very interesting, Pablo Aguado's, and we even thought to follow three bullfighters, but Roca Rey, when he made it to the film, was an advice of Pablo Aguado, the other bullfighter. It's like a casting process. There's no much difference from a fiction film. You might like one actor or another, but at a personal human level, and at the end of the day, what is imposed is you look and look and look, and the dialogues, and you look for them, and you end up choosing someone else. I'm sorry, we can't hear the question from the floor. We were with him, and quite often we didn't know what type of personality he has, albeit we were very close to him. And also the look. You got the feeling that he was controlling everything, and the truth is he was immersed. It's a bit of introspection. There's a bit of mystery there, because he was looking inwards. Also loneliness, because not only his loneliness and the loneliness of this group that lives in a sort of bubble, and they filmed. It's folkloric, sociological, the audience. There's nothing of this here. This is something that's been seen quite often, and weren't interested in it. So therefore, we focused in what may be conceptually and visually derive in something much more interesting, without any other consideration in mind. And also at a production level, in situ, we were always invisible, so that whatever had to happen should happen, so not get in the way. That was very important. And what happened was, sometimes We had to shoot again in another bull ring because nothing that we liked happened, but we never wanted to get in the middle of what was happening. It's an external portrait. It's as if you ask a painter, well, do whatever, the painter does whatever they want. You commission a painter to do a painting, but it's the painter's portrait. So therefore, obviously, from elements of reality and what this open access that we had, but at the end of the day, it doesn't stop being a point of view of an artist who's outside this reality that's taking place. Hi, good afternoon over here. I would like to ask you precisely that you talked about this a moment ago because of the title of the film. How do you come about the title of the film? And what the characters that make up the story of the final result? Thank you. Well, you'd have to ask them. Andres has seen a little bit and it wasn't the final cut, so therefore they're still waiting to see it themselves. The first question was? Oh, the title, Tardes de Soledad. It's quite curious. It's a title that we had at the beginning. And we were filming both bullfighters. And sometimes in the editing room we said, well, the truth is there solitude or loneliness? Why do the people give titles of films before? It's better to put the title of the film at the end, not at the beginning. But it's got to reflect the title because we've always got problems. We put the title of the film at the beginning. I say, I don't like it, or it's like provisional. You get what I'm saying. So, for example, if you put the title at the beginning, so you've got to be able to show this. It's going to be along these lines. You're going to say this and that and the other, as if you were very smart. But here there was sort of like undulations in our process. It was, is there loneliness or solitude in the bullfighter or not? And we were editing this. Are they really on their own, or they do it as if it's a day-to-day thing, or the truth is the risk to a certain extent isolates the person or the group of people in his gang? This was something that fluctuated in our mind, just like many other elements of the film that we didn't know whether they would form part of the final film. We saw it in the images, but we didn't know how to extend whether they would bloom in a solid way. The issue of masculinity, for example, we thought it was going to appear, but you look at the film and it seems much more comical. And then other elements, I don't know. You didn't know really whether this would end up being reflected in the final images or not. And this is one issue. And at the end of all of the editing process, we said, yes, the truth, there's a bit of this, there's a bit of, well, the film plays with that. The van is closed, the room is closed, the bull ring is closed without an audience and just with the bullfight. There is a bit of loneliness or solitude that can be seen, and this introspection also. And at the end, that we kept the title, but there was a lot of doubts at certain moments in our mind whether to keep the title. So we thought it was a bit more professional. It's a professional activity, and this metaphysical side and spiritual side of loneliness or solitude wasn't that present. We were doubtful as regards the title.
Hola,
Albert. He's speaking in Catalan now.
Creus que és una pel·lícula, primer felicitats per l'èxit, creus que és per tots els públics? I no vull dir en termes d'adults o de nens, o si hi ha violència o no hi ha violència. Tenint en compte que la tauromàquia és un tema sempre tan controvertit, què penses amb això, entre els detractors, els defensors, no? Que sempre és una mica complicat.
Well, it's circumstantial, the subject matter. We know it is this subject matter. They say we don't have to go beat around the bush. We know that we're talking about this issue, bullfighting. Let's not discuss this again. Whoever wants to watch the film, well, first of all, they want to see, perhaps knowing it's a film of mine, they might find certain elements that are difficult to find in any other place. And it'll be something which is really personal and something which is quite committed vis-a-vis the language of films and the aesthetics of films, and we will not concede anything at this level. So therefore, despite he, as a producer, may be interested that the film might go this way, or the actor would like this, or the other person wants to go in another way. The only criteria that that's most important is this. This is a guarantee to start off. As of there, I think the film about this subject matter is sufficiently honest. The portrait is complex and rich enough so that anyone can watch it and find something in it. And this was the intention, in fact. I don't know. As I was saying, we were looking, I have nothing to say with regards to your question. A question for Albert. There's a concentration this afternoon at 6 p.m. by Podemos Euskadi here in the Basque Country. And according to them, the film romanticizes bullfighting. I would like to ask you, Alberto, what do you think about the fact that there's a concentration accompanying the viewing of the film, and do you really think it romanticizes bullfighting sincerely? I don't know. I don't think whether it's good or bad, everyone can do whatever they want. It seems a bit ridiculous to focus this on works of art just because it deals with one issue. Any work of art, paintings are addressing war, and there are evil people that are portrayed in museums, and they're very bad people. They don't. A work of art makes no sense. A work of art is there to be witness of itself, of nothing else. So therefore, I don't know. I don't see the relevance of all this. It's an object which is completely apart from the film. And what was the other question? I don't know, romanticize bullfighting. I don't think that's the word, but it does seem in certain aspect about the aspect of his commitment or of being brave, but there is a certain fascination for this. To what extent this is romanticizing it or not? It's a bit difficult to define this word, I would say. But yes, I don't know. But courage and being brave and commitment to his profession, for example, there's something there that fascinates and how this is carried out. Being a foreigner, obviously, I saw this film in a different way. And I'd like to ask you about other protagonists by the bulls, and not to provoke or to cause any drama, but this film talks about the mystery of death. I would like to know, how do you shoot a film like this? Being the witness of the death, multiple deaths of the bulls, seeing so close, just like some Japanese films. And this happens live, and whether you do it with a distance as an artist, I'd like to know, you as the director and the rest of the crew, whether no, personally, no, not at all. We filmed everything. And that was the idea. The camera operators, they captured the best images, the most beautiful, and so on and so forth. Then in the editing process is something different, and there is a selection, obviously. There are certain considerations that are aesthetic. My editing process starts in a very strange way, but determines everything. I choose the images that I like, but very quickly, of all of the footage, not very quickly because it takes months, because there was a lot of footage, but very arbitrarily and very quickly. I like this, I don't know why, I don't even know why. And then the film is manufactured only with those images. I don't know, let's say, I put a certain filter, apart from my taste, or what I like, without any consideration about the contents, only of the fascination that the image may bring about, whatever reason, but sometimes because there's a dialogue, because there's a ray of light that can be seen or whatever on this, or I like the movement of the camera, or for whatever reason. I place it there, and then we edit the film just with those images. That first filter, which is completely arbitrary, means that there's not too many questions about the content or what the film will say or not. The film will be built and constructed as of there, and we'll see this slowly but surely. And many of these images of the bull, for example, there are very beautiful images that aren't seen too much, is when the bull looks at the camera. there is a bit of a mirror between the bull fighter and the bull, that they look at each other, and the close-ups of the bulls looking towards the camera is quite strange. This can't be seen too much because it's like, it's cinema in itself almost, and it's like something, it says, what is he looking at? Who's he looking at? What's our point of view? And there was a bit of construction at this level, and I like that. And also at the moment of death, inevitably, you know, there's the slow process that I like, because you see how life abandons. It's not a unique moment because the animal has no awareness that he's going to die. He doesn't know what death is. He doesn't know that he's going to die. So therefore, you do see that slow process. You see, and it seemed, I thought it was poetic as the way his life abandons him. And this process is very slow. It's strange to see it in that way. And we chose those. There are many other images, of course. There was a lot we could choose from. At the end, it's like a choice, aesthetic, poetic choice. You think this moment, this fits in, and it gives you a serious counterpoint, or more transcendental, or even more violent it can be, but it's necessary. And it forms part of the flow of the film, the hypnotic flow of the film, and perhaps the issue of the film, which is life and death, which is represented in all bullfights. Hi, Albert here. You also talk about the fear that bullfighters. And why did you want to highlight this? And what fascinates you is that young people choose a profession where they risk their life. Well, I don't know, perhaps because it's something nowadays, as everything is communication, everyone has opinions everywhere. An act of this nature or characteristics has something that reminds you that these acts are necessary and they're risky. And this is the way it is. I compare this. It seems that you look at the war in Ukraine, if they want to win, the only way to win is fighting in the battlefield. The speeches of the European Union, and you don't win the war through that. You've got to go there and do the war. And so therefore, symbolically speaking, and not cruel, or less cruelly, this symbolizes this. There's a phase in the face where I said, life is worthless. I feel life is worthless. And that's it's worth doing something that's larger than life, because life in itself is useless. It's worthless because we have to risk it. We have to use our life to do something. Pure conservation doesn't take you anywhere. So therefore, metaphorically speaking, bullfighting calls this in, and there is a slight fascination of understanding the reason behind it. And it usually is mysterious, and it can also continue to be mysterious. And I'm not too sure whether the film reveals this, and I think it makes it even darker, which many of my films do. They make the subject more dark, and instead of clarifying things, it makes them much more difficult to understand. So therefore, or darker to understand, so to speak. But there's an act there. You go into the act and there's no communication, neither are opinions involved. There aren't any shortcuts. Everything goes from a transcendental event that takes place. Fear is something which is interesting, because it prevents us doing many things, significant things. Fear, I could be fear of how the film is going to be received, or to showing a certain image. Fear is something that's constantly amongst us, and which pressures us quite often to do things that are less daring and that are less, and to avoid a minor. But it makes you a bit bolder, so therefore it's very interesting how to manage this, and the film has a bit of graphic, and the fact that we focused upon the bullfights in the bull ring in Madrid, Seville and Bilbao, where, if you want to know, because of the pressure, they have much more pressure, and because the bulls are much larger, they're much more dangerous, and they have, it's not exactly the same, the type, how they confront them and they bullfight them. And this difference, fear plays a much more bigger role there, and precisely to overcoming this fear, to know how to deal with it or to manage it is one of the big issues of the film. That's how this is done physically and live without any possible subterfuges. I don't know. It's a smart, sincerely, it's like a small metaphorical lesson. One final question. Hi. Hi. Montse, Albert. One for Albert and one for Montse. Linking to the issue of characters and the photography, you have the impression that you film a world in decadence, which is in the process of disappearing, for me, quite fortunately, by the way. But, and even, so therefore, for Montse, Albert has also said, and as his fictions, he tries to find something, seek something that's unexpected. In a documentary, was the production different to his fiction films? Well, I don't know. It's very difficult to say because from the inside, any person who's doing anything, he or she doesn't want to think that what he or she is doing is in decadence or something bad is going to happen to you or not. So from the inside, and especially in a thing that requires so much concentration and so on, you live it, or our feeling is they lived it positively, then obviously they don't stop being aware of the evolution of society that perhaps is going towards, in the last few years, is going in a different direction. But that was a sociological consideration that it didn't matter to us in the film. And there was an element that we thought that could exist, the crepuscular, for example, or the twilight element, which could be a good document if this bullfighting disappears. But then when we were inside, it was an element that ended up coming to the surface, that twilight issue of the end of bullfighting. It's very difficult, sociologically speaking, it's a discussion, but within the middle of the battle, what we were trying to portray in the film, this is left to one side of the images we show. And the difficulty of this production with others is the discontinuity of the shooting. That for the first time, we're not used to doing it in this way, and for us has been a bit complicated and extended over time, because how long is 5 years to make the film, and 3 years shooting. The truth is we had to shoot in one bull ring, and it was about 14 bull rings, and we needed a crew for 3 or 4 days. We didn't have the feeling that we could find a development of anything, but the truth is it was one of the challenges of the film, is to create this homogeneity. To shooting over too many times and jumping from one bull ring to another, it should have this homogeneity of the concentration and the subject matter and the atmosphere at the same time. And for example, bull ring is 1 year and one is a year and a half later. If you look at the face of the person, there is he looks a bit older. It's noticeable, but it's not noticeable because there's very little time goes by, but making it homogeneous, I don't like this. I like to short shoots when I make a film, and this is true and very intense, and this is what creates, this is what gives a lot of atmosphere to the images, but you always learn from something, so therefore I can even make films this way. The structure of the film is like a bullfight with all the bulls that appear, for example. There's 6 bulls here, we portrayed 5 bulls, but they're being able to construct it from one bullfight, from the amalgamation of many bullfights, and there was this idea that I like very much, that I wanted to be like a bullfight. That's the film could be the metaphor of one bullfight, and there's more or less 6 bulls. Each has a different point of view, but we wanted to have repetition, the reiteration, and to try to
es un poco la atmósfera.
The atmosphere of repetitive, some things, more interesting things happen, less interesting, some things, some bullfights are better than others. From a real bullfight,
Tuviera esta estructura.
we wanted the film to have this different structure. Okay, and quoting one of the characters of the film,
¿Con qué verdad habéis respondido?
you've responded with great truth. Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you very much for the questions, and a round of applause for the film.